we had a cancer biophotonics position open, and we were very happy to be able to get Xiang to come here. As he's done currently now, just recently, a professor, full professor of biomedical engineering and radiological sciences. So he's split between engineering and medicine. And he really is working at this really cool interface between optical imaging and medical imaging, in the sense of doing, we've all, I think everybody's heard of photoacoustics, but he's like pushing into other energy sources, X-ray, proton beam, electrical fields, etc. And it's really cool, like just kind of being able to just a little more seamlessly go from the limits of optics to towards the limits of acoustics. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Xiang, and take it away. Just welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bernard, for the kind of introduction. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's great. I think this is my favorite topic, because photoacoustic imaging, sometimes people call it optoacoustic imaging, is really I'm kind of tell you guys my personal research journey. So it's a great pleasure to talk about this topic. But before I get started, I want to ask how many of you guys are working on photoacoustic imaging?
There's one person here. I don't know if you can see her.
Okay, we have one person. That's great. Yeah. Probably you can skip many of the content because we have a lot of people really not working on the photoacoustic imaging. And then how many of you guys have heard of photoacoustic imaging? Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, as I said before, most of the American people call this as the photoacoustic imaging, but most of the European people call this as optoacoustic imaging. I consider this is like a French fries or American fries, something like that. But they're the same thing basically. So photoacoustic imaging really is just using laser to produce ultrasound for imaging. It's just that simple. And whenever you apply a laser beam, it's supposed to be a cartoon, and then it's going to produce ultrasonic wave. That wave is going to propagate, reach to the surface of the patient, and then you can use a transducer to pick it up and then use this for imaging. A basic process is we're using laser energy below the safety limit, and it's going to be generated. The energy is going to be absorbed and then generate a tiny bit heat. We're not talking about a couple of degrees. We're talking about like a mini Kelvin, and then even just for 1 mini Kelvin, we can produce pretty large pressure wave, say 800 Pascal. So that's why we can really using a commercial detector to catch it. So I will give you guys a kind of an energy to really understand what's going on with photoacoustic imaging, right? You have this laser beam is just like a lightning sounder, right? So you think about there's a lightning, and then so whenever lightning is happening, and then that air in the atmosphere is gonna be heated up and expand to produce a sonic bound. Now, how can we estimate the location and strength of the lightning events based on what we heard as a sound? Actually, we can do that, right? Imagine that whenever you see the lightning and you start counting the time, let's say you count for 3 seconds. You count for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, and you hear the sounder. So can any of you guys tell me roughly how far the lightning events is away from us? Anyone wanna be the volunteer?
2 kilometers.
Yeah, it's a roughly half of the 2 kilometers around 1 kilometers. The reason is it's unlike ultrasound, you have pulse and echo, but in this case, whenever they produce ultrasound, they reach to us. It's the speed of sound in the air, roughly like 340 meters per second. You times by three, that's roughly one kilometers. You're right. If it's pulse echo ultrasound, you go to the target and come get echo back. That's 2 kilometers. So this is how we calculate it. We're doing exactly the same thing in photoacoustic. Whenever you are shining a laser beam, and then you trigger the data acquisition, you count how much delay you have. Let's say you have 10 microseconds, and then you multiply by the speed of sound in a tissue, which is say 1.5 millimeter per microseconds, and then you times 10 microseconds, so you get a roughly of 15 millimeter distance there. That's the location you were getting. And also based on the amount of sound we heard, we can estimate how strong the lightning events. So that's we are following the same principle, physics principle, for this biomedical application in photoacoustic imaging. And now imagine that you have like one point source, anything that absorbs light, and then you have one detector. You know that that source of optical absorption is based on this circle, right? You have the speed of sound, whatever speed of sound in tissue, typically is like 1500 meters per second. And then you multiply by the time delay, you know the target is on this circle. But you don't know exactly which location on this circle, right? Could be anywhere. And to pinpoint the location, because we do imaging is really we want to know the internal structure, so we have three, if you just have a three detector at a three different position, you have different time delay, and you can easily pinpoint the location of that same target. So that's just a very simple back projection principle for imaging reconstruction. In a reality, we typically have like hundreds of those ultrasound detector, so we can calculate those location. We can have a 3D complicated structure reconstruction. So those are basic principles. And then next, we would like to ask as a new imaging modality, what is imaging contrast? Basically, what if I gave you an imaging of photoacoustic, what are we looking at? So talking about imaging contrast, really we have two type of imaging contrast. One is something we call an endogenous contrast, meaning we have the contrast from the human body already without any contrast agents. So because we have to think about what are the molecules really absorb the light in a human body. And then really if you look at the graph on the left, I have listed four different molecules typically within the human body. We have water is a blue line. Water has very strong absorption after 800 nanometers, has a even stronger in this infrared. So that's the absorption curve for water. And then you have HHB, which is hemoglobin, deoxygenated hemoglobin. So that's this curve. And then you have the red curve is oxygenated hemoglobin. And then you have melanin. These are the major absorption. Sometimes when people doing research with the cardiac, sometimes they look at the lipid. So there's a different absorption. I didn't put it here, but these four different molecules are the basic absorption molecules within the human body. So you can imagine that in photoacoustic imaging, really without contrast agent, you are just looking at these four different molecules and at different wavelengths. For example, let's look at six um 650. So I don't know if you guys can let's draw a line 650. It's roughly here. Can you guys see the line I draw on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you look at this line I just draw around 650 or 700, you have the very strong absorption from melanin, and then you have pretty strong absorption from deoxygenated hemoglobin, and then you don't have a much of a strong absorption for oxygenated hemoglobin. However, if we have a different wavelength, let's say above 800, 850, and then you get a different absorption, right? You still have a pretty strong absorption for melanin, and then you have a stronger absorption for oxygenated hemoglobin, but you have less absorption for deoxygenated hemoglobin. So in that case, in very typical application is if we're using two different wavelengths, one is around 6 or 700, the other one is above 800 nanometers, just two different wavelengths, we can do calculation for oxygenated hemoglobin and deoxygenated hemoglobin, and then we can calculate the oxygen saturation, which is a very important indicator for these physiologic changes in human body. So that being said, really look at this spectrum. That's our physics. For photoacoustic imaging, most of the application is really looking at the blood vessels, blood flow, and oxygenation, and such. Um, but we also, like any other modality, imaging modality, photoacoustic imaging can also be using this external contrast agent. People have done a lot of research by using different contrast agent, like some typical contrast agent are nanoparticles. Nanoparticles, you have silicon nanoparticle, you have gold nanoparticle, you have all kinds of nanoparticle, and then these nanoparticles they change their absorption peak. That's how we get a strong signal from photoacoustic imaging by changing the size of the particle. So that's very easy for many of the chemistry. And then people also using some organic particles like melanin, like even lipid as a contrast agent. Um, Let me see how can. Okay. That's a contrast, imaging contrast. So I just want to go through some brief history of this new modality. Really, everybody mentioned Alexander Graham Bayer. He's a guy. Any of you guys know him? Who is Bell?
The launcher with phone.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
right. You're right. He is the guy invented the phone. He also discovered that whenever if you have a modulating light that can produce sound wave, initially he was trying to invent this type of phone, but he's the first guy really discover the photoacoustic effect. But there's not much of research going on. I would say over 100 years until 1980s. There's another professor at University of Arizona. His name is Sergio Boven. Boven actually did quite a lot of research, not on laser, but on X-ray, some radiation. He found that this radiation also produce ultrasound, which I will mention later. Um, However, from 1980 to 2003, that's roughly about another 20 years. Not much going on. There are some research going on, but um, I wouldn't say there's breakthrough until 2003. Dr. Nihon Wang, he was a professor at Texas A&M. Now he's a professor at Caltech. Um, he together with his students published the first paper on natural biotechnology mentioned that photoacoustic imaging can be used for small animal brain imaging. That actually really opens a new possibility for a lot of small animal study. So this is paper I'm talking about. Right now, I just checked. This paper has been heavily cited for 2,240 times. So it's a remarkable impact. So this paper, the title is Non-Invasive Tomography for Structure and Functional In Vivo Imaging of the Brain. The reason this paper really catch attention is not only it's just published on Nature Journal, but it's also that's the first time people are trying to imagine the brain, but you don't have to take off the scab and the skull as well. So everything is intact. Of course, we have to remove the hair, but everything is intact, it's non-invasive. That's the first time we can say the vasculature within the mouse brain. And they did some simple demonstration that if you stimulate the left whiskey, you say how the brain region was react. And if you do the right one, you have different region corresponding to those different stimulation. So let's just quickly look at the setup on the left. That was the first generation photoacoustic tomography system. If you look at this system, the laser is shining from the top onto the mouse brain, and, and everything was including the mouse is in a water tank, is immersed for the water tank. I mean, anyone?
Yeah, I don't think,
How about
I don't think, I don't think they heard the question. I think you cut out a little bit.
okay, so sorry about that. So I was asking, look at the first generation photoacoustic tomography system listed on the left bottom, and everything was including the mouse transducer. Everything is within the immersed in the water tank. I'm asking, why do you guys think it has to be in the water tank?
Better transmission and.
Yes, because ultrasound has a limitation. Unlike optic, you put a camera, you can detect it in the air, but ultrasound does not propagate well in the air. So, but it does, um, as long as there is not much of the impedance change, is fine. So the impedance is close to the soft tissue, to the animal. So if you put in the water, there's not much of refraction or reflection. So that's why, basically for coupling. Imagine that whenever you go to the hospital, you have to apply the ultrasound gel for coupling. That ultrasound gel is like this what this water tank is does. So anyway, this is a very simple setup. You have laser from the top, and then you have generate ultrasound wave propagate in the water to the transducer. Now, in this system, we only have one transducer. So if you want to do an imaging, as I said before, one transducer is not enough, right? To figure out a one point target, you need three. To do an imaging, you need hundreds of those. So what would you do? You only have one transducer in order to get an imaging.
Rotate.
Yes, we do rotation. So our first generation device is we have a step motor here, and step motor is driving this transducer doing rotation around this animal brain, and we acquired the data at different depths, say 100 steps or 200 steps, and then we put all the images together. That's how you get these beautiful images there. So this paper really it's a made a wave, and everybody say, "Wow, we can do small animal brain imaging without cut the scalp and all. That's very impressive." But then we're trying to figure out. So that was 2003. This paper, I was really being very excited about this field. So I started my graduate study, which this is my first paper published on JBO in 2004. So I kind of spent like 2 years. We were developing pretty much the same system, one single transducer and step motor doing the mechanical scanning. So I was thinking about what are other application. One possible application is really for cancer therapy, right? So at the time I was studied the photodynamic therapy. How many of you guys heard of photodynamic therapy?
We all
Maybe
have a
one.
question.
Okay. Can you just quickly, huh?
Quickly what?
Can you quickly explain to everybody what is a photodynamic therapy?
You basically shine light to activate, usually with like a drug or something. It's a light activated drug. So you're trying to treat something using light. You're frozen.
Sean, can you hear us?
Yeah. So photodynamic.
Sean,
I'm
can I
frozen.
suggest something? Maybe can you turn off your video?
Yes.
Could you turn off your camera? That might help with,
Okay.
I think it's freezing a little bit.
Okay.
You're speaking. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
I can do that. Yeah. Um, I don't know if it's better now, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, basically, I was talking about, yes, photodynamic therapy is you need a light to activate some photosensitizer and eventually either destroy the cancer cells or destroy the microvessels. So in this case, I was using the photoacoustic imaging to monitor how the microvessels, microenvironment being destroyed by um, PDT, photodynamic therapy, and monitored by photoacoustic imaging. This work has been uh, repeated by other groups. I don't know, maybe you guys read some of the papers published recently, I think 2 or 3 years ago, on Nature, one of the Nature journal. Really, I think they have found some clinical application on that. And then another one is just to visualize how the new watch signature being formed out over time with photoacoustic imaging is the one of the best tools to visualize this microvessels images. That's another paper we published. We have a breast cancer model on mice, and as you can say, from day 5, 10, 15, we can visualize how the vessels are growing, how the density of the vessels increase with photoacoustic imaging. That was for photoacoustomography, and another application emerging was back in 2009. That was for molecular imaging. Um, any of you guys doing molecular imaging? in this group?
One of
Anyone?
one of the girls in our lab, one of the girls in our lab is doing molecular imaging.
Okay, great. Can you just briefly tell us what you guys do?
She generates these nano droplets that are activated by a certain wavelength of light, and then they release a drug into into the animals.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, I personally also did quite some research on photoacoustic molecular imaging, just exactly as you said before. Um, we're using some type of a contrast agent. In this case, it is the um, nanotubes, carbon nanotubes. These nanotubes can be easily conjugated with biomarkers. I have done one biomarkers which is for, I think for it's many years ago. It's for brain tumor. That was the tumor's cell line we choose was U87. Um, there was a biomarker is alpha V beta 3. So we had a conjugation with the nanotubes, and then we're trying to use photoacoustic imaging to track how the what the targeting efficiency. Almost the same time, there's another paper at the time Sam Gambill was still alive, and he has a student Adam. Now he's a professor at Stanford. He was doing also nanotubes and published some really good work on that. So I guess that opens another possibility for really targeted imaging for cancer, for any other um, different type of diseases, because as long as you can target different problems. Okay, and so the time goes to 2012. I actually moved from China to United States in 2011. I was working in University of Florida, and we were trying to because remember we used like a single transducer mechanic scanning for 2D imaging, and then we were thinking, well, can we do a real-time 3D imaging? We call it 40 photoacoustic tomography. And I spent roughly about a year there. We were developing um, like a hat. We have, as if you can see in the system, we have hundreds of those transducers distributed on a spherical shape. Um, you know, we have this configuration. And then we're trying to image in the brain. We want to have a real-time 3D imaging. Um, we have built a dedicated transducer, dedicated preamplifier, and all these electronics. We really have a very, imagine that we have a very fast imaging speed. I think the imaging speed only limited by the repetition rate of laser. At the time, laser's repetition rate was very slow, just 10 hertz. So we roughly reached 10 hertz a frame rate 3D. Nowadays, the laser repetition rate is way faster. You can actually go faster as like thousands of hertz. But anyway, one of the paper I published is on neuroimaging, trying to study epilepsy. So, one question the neurosurgeon really like to know is um, where is the um, where is the epilepsy focus? So if we found where the epilepsy originated, we can just simply do the surgery and remove it, and problem solved. But it's very hard because whenever the um, epilepsy happened and it's propagated across the entire brain, So we need to have a very fast imaging speed and really find out uh, where it come from. So basically, so our 4D imaging system actually serves that purposes. And I don't have time to show more data, but I'm just quickly summarize. So I would say in the past 20, 30 years, people really build photoacoustic imaging as a multi-scale image modality. Unlike many other modality like MRI, like some other modality, really you have um, most likely millimeter, sub-millimeter resolution. You cannot go to micrometers resolution or some other high resolution image modality. You can achieve micrometer resolution, but you cannot really image in large field of view for deep seated organ. But photoacoustic imaging is a modality. It's very special because we can change the resolution scale. Whenever needed, we can image in a single cell. If you guys look at the images on the very left, that is a single cell imaging of a red blood cells with those malarial parasites within a single red blood cells with very high nanoscale resolution photoacoustic imaging. And the second one is I think is the video. As you can see, this is one of the paper published by Nihon Wang's group. You can see how a single red blood cells moving within the capillary, right? Um, any of you guys know how big a red blood cell typically is? What's the size, typical size? It's just a rough guess.
Like 5 to 10 microns.
That is correct. Yes, it's rough around 10 micrometers. And then whenever they passing through a capillary, they can squeeze, they change their shape and size. But I just want to give you guys a idea, an impression that photoacoustic imaging can actually tracking each individual red blood cells moving in a capillary. And then the third one is another demonstration of a organ size imaging. This is a photoacoustic imaging applied to retina to the eye. You can imagine these tiny vessels for the entire eye. And last one is kind of a whole body imaging. This is a embryo of a mice, if I remember correctly from I think Sun Hu's lab in back he was in Virginia, University of Virginia. So it's very impressive. So again, this is a modality that the resolution and the field of view can be changed according to whatever biometric application. It's very unique. Okay, so what are the possible application for photoacoustic tomography? Um, as it's been there for many years. I would say it's been very hot topic in the last 30 years, 20 years at least. Um, so I would think for cancer imaging certainly is one. Um, in fact, one of the very first FDA approved machine, I think is from a company in Texas. Um, it's for breast cancer imaging, which I can show you guys more images there. That's and then second application, I think we can also visualize these retina microvessels. Um, but in my opinion, it's very hard to beat with like OCT, right? Because OCT pretty much can do the same thing, but you don't need an ultrasound transducer for that. And some other people apply this to tissue engineering because if you artificially make some tissue, you want to make sure it's alive, you have to have this microvessels. So this can be applied for that. And also we have talked about the molecular imaging. So you can always make all kinds of nanoparticles, different contrast agent, and conjugate with different biomarkers. And that's another whole not applications there. I think so far the most promising application is really the small animal imaging. Um, Although I don't know if you guys have heard, recently the new NIH director and the NIH put a statement that they don't want too much of a small animal study. They don't want too much of a study, only just demonstrated on mice. They want to have more patient study, more probably simulation or digital phantom, whatever. But anyway, you will have to do animal study. Um, you cannot escape that step. But for small animal imaging, there's a lot of small animal imaging modality like fluorescence, like X-ray, PET. They're working very well. But I think photoacoustic imaging really have a very good position here because if you look at this video, that was published on Nature Biomedical Engineering back in 2017. If you do the scanning, you focus on the red line doing the cross section of this mice, you can visualize each of those cross section. You pretty much see almost everything within the organ. You see not only the microvessels network, but also you see kidney, you see all these different internal organ where at a very high resolution. So the reason I think small animal application is very promising for photoacoustic is you think about the size of the small animal is like 1 to 2 centimeter in diameter, right? That's a perfect size for laser and and especially for laser penetration. And then you have a high resolution and you have a lot of information there. So that's something I truly believe is going to be very useful. And another one is a clinical application. As I mentioned, the very first application is the breast imaging. There's one device, one company already get a FDA approval, and I think early this year they all already get the reimbursement code. This is very important for new medical imaging modality. If you don't get a reimbursement code, no physician is going to use it, right? You are never penetrating through the uh, clinic practice. So that's very important. So if you look at these images and from the real patient, you really see the vasculature structure. Also, you say the tumor region. Um, I just want to ask, do you guys know what is the gold standard for breast imaging right now in clinic practice?
Never.
Mammogram, yes. Mammogram is the gold standard in clinic practice. Almost, I was told almost every woman was suggested to take a mammogram whenever they're older than 50. So just for screening. Imagine that how much dose you take for each scanning, and then how many scannings you need to take every year. But this photoacoustic imaging it really don't have any ionizing radiation at all. That's a big plus. But now the one of the limitation is um, most of the, at least for now, um, because of the limitation, penetration limitation of the light, um, roughly like 4 centimeter, 5 centimeter, for patients has larger breast size, we have to do um, compression. So that's a uncomfortable process. People do this for mammogram as well. Um, so that's something can be improved. Eventually, if we can do a free scanning without compression, that'd be great. Another possible application is for dermatology because, especially there's portal and stain and a lot of skin problem. You want to look at the microvessels under the skin. There's one group in Germany, they're doing this uh, a lot with patient. You can build a portable device and really do the scan, and you can say this. Um, so compared to OCT, for example, the resolution is comparable, but the imaging depth is a little bit better, up to, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 millimeter. Another possible clinical application is the thyroid imaging, because at the head neck region, thyroid cancer is very important. I just heard a talk yesterday, and they were talking about how do we using photoacoustic imaging to monitoring the radiation therapy response. So that's a possible application as well. And another application is really um, looking build a catheter goes inside the human body, do the endoscopy. So there has been research going on to combine photoacoustic and ultrasound for cardiac application, for other applications as well. Just a quick summary for photoacoustic tomography. I think we have talking about a brief history and the possible application and the challenge as well. So um, though some of the images I cited was like 20 years ago, so it's pretty old. Nowadays, there's new development. The imaging system is smaller, faster, and portable and easy to use. So, yeah, before I jump onto a microscopy, I just want to quickly have a discussion with you guys. Any questions so far for photochromography?
There's one question. Do you want to get the microphone?
I don't think he needs it.
Oh, we don't need it. Okay, Najib,
So
please.
my question is about the light source. Does it need to be focused or can it just be like uniform illumination?
That's a great question. I will talk more about that later. But for tomography, we typically don't focus on light because you want to have larger field of view. But for microscopy, you have to focus on light. I can talk more about that. And then for the light source, you know, as I put one of the bullet point here is um, traditionally at the beginning we're using this solid state laser, which is a big bucket laser, and then the repetition rate is no 10 hertz, 20 hertz. Um, but recently there's new lasers come out. It's smaller, portable, cheaper, higher repetition rate. Even people trying to use laser diode, which is very cheap, very cheap. So some of the group even mention of developing like a wearable device, right? You think about like a photoacoustic typically is a pretty big system. How do you make it as a wearable device? You have to make the laser source cheaper, smaller, and also ultrasound transducer. There's research say we don't need hundreds of transducer. With deep learning, with algorithm, we only need one transducer to make it as a wearable device. Yeah, a lot of new development going on. Very exciting. Good. Any other questions?
Yeah, what are like the typical pulse durations for these pulse lasers and like would you have to worry about the peak power it reaches?
Yeah, that's another great question. For photoacoustic imaging, typically we use tens of nanoseconds laser, typically ranges around 10 nanoseconds. And you can use longer pulse duration. Like so, for example, this laser diode, typically they have 200 nanoseconds, or even microseconds pulse duration. And like for my recent research, not for laser, but for radiation, like Bernard mentioned, we're using X-ray in radiation oncology. That's a 5 microseconds pulse duration, and yeah, so it varies. The basic idea is the shorter pulse duration, the better signal generation efficiency. And then you might ask, well, how short is short, right? I have been used 5 picoseconds laser before, and people even tried femtosecond laser. It's working. There might be some new physics effect, like maybe two photon absorption, something like that, but not much of research going on in that direction. Again, tens of nanoseconds is perfect for photoacoustic tomography. Good questions. Any other questions?
I have a question, Sean.
Yeah,
This is Vasim.
yeah.
Can you talk about prospects for optical detection of the acoustic wave? Yeah, currently you have to place a transducer in contact, right?
Yeah,
If I'm
yeah.
mistaken. And of course, there's always nice opportunities for multimodality imaging, and of course, the other modalities that we typically consider are optical. And is there any prospect for a non-contact
Yeah, that's a
form
great.
of photo or optoacoustic imaging?
That's a great question. I was trying to do that a couple of years ago. I even had a graduate student. She was intended to have her work with John Pien's lab using OCT, some type of interferometer to detect ultrasound. In theory, it's working. Um, and she presented the idea at RSNA, which is the biggest conference in radiology. She was interviewed by a very famous website, and people think those physicians were very excited. So you can do well, at the time we just say we do ultrasound, detect ultrasound. You can do ultrasound imaging without using a traditional piezo transducer, without contact the patient. That's fantastic. Um, but the challenge would be um, it's very tough to detect ultrasound on these rough surfaces. With interferometer, typically it's good to work on this very smooth surface because you need to collect the reflected light. So we haven't really made much of progress, but certainly, yeah, that's an exciting area as long as we have a good optic detection, efficient, robust to this human body, I mean rough surfaces, that'd be great. People would love it. Even not even mention photoacoustic, just for ultrasound, that would be fantastic. But so far we haven't made a really big progress on that.
Sean, I have a second question, just following up on Brian's question earlier on pulse duration.
Yeah.
You definitely mentioned that, of course, your signal generation is more efficient when you use the shorter pulse duration. Could you also comment on trade-offs in terms of spatial resolution and pulse duration?
Yeah, that's another great question. So, um, whenever we're using nanoseconds laser for photoacoustic, the resolution will not be limited by. I have other slides to have an equation to explain that, but the quick answer is whenever you're using nanoseconds pulse duration, that would never affect the resolution in X, Y, and Z. But if you using longer pulse duration, like tens of microseconds, that certainly would generate very low frequency ultrasound wave. And whenever the frequency of ultrasound is lower, you get a worse resolution. That's just a basic idea. So I guess I'm gonna move on and talking about the microscopy. So and then you guys may have a more question on after I finish this. So I was thinking about tomography, meaning we want to image in large field of view, but we don't have very high resolution. We have resolution in the tens of micron, but not like in micron or submicron. But for microscopy, we really can achieve very high resolution, but at the same time, we have a little bit better imaging depth than most of the optical microscopy. This table really gave you idea why we want um, you use light to generate ultrasound for microscopy. So, I will give you another graph showing that all type of optic microscopy, their advantage and also their drawback. So, but anyway, most of the high resolution optic microscopy relatively has channel penetration depths, but photoacoustic microscopy has higher, so we can reach up to 1.5 millimeter, 2 millimeter. Sounds like not a big deal, but even with those improvement, we can imaging a lot of more target alive. And then optic imaging has a very good sensitivity for many of the molecular and cellular events, but ultrasound does not have. So we don't compare with ultrasound. So this graph really gave you a good idea on conventional optical microscopy, what's the imaging depends, what actually we can say, um, and confocal two photon OCT, right? And the blue color is our photoacoustic microscopy. I'm going to talk about two type of photoacoustic microscopy. One is ORPAM, is optic resolution photoacoustic microscopy, and the other one is ARPM, is acoustic resolution photoacoustic microscopy. As you can see in this table, um, so photoacoustic microscopy can penetrate a little bit deeper than confocal two photon, maybe sometimes than OCT, but still has very high resolution. So that's the point. So I have to mention this paper that was published back in 2006. This is a paper also published from Li Hong Wang's group. The first author now is a professor at Northwestern. Um, they develop like a microscope using laser to produce ultrasound. And if you focus on this area, that's the configuration of their microscope. So they have a mirror, which this is the mirror, which they can they can refocus the light from the side to the tissue. And then in the middle, they put a ultrasound transducer there, and is a curved transducer, just single transducer that can receive the ultrasound wave generate from the tissue. That's basically the device. And then they do mechanic scanning. So the reason this paper is important is they demonstrate that for melanoma, you can get the whole melanoma. This is the melanoma here, and also you see this vasculature surrounded with different wavelengths. So I'm gonna divide this at two type. One is optical resolution microscopy. So you see this setup, you have laser beam, which is a green. This green beam focus, you have objective lens, and you focus all the way to your sample, right? And whenever you generate a signal here, the sound wave is going to propagate, and these are the water propagate, and then the tricky part is here. You have two prism. Between two prism, there is a gap, and in the gap, they filled with the oil, which would allow the light to penetrating through the prism, but they will refract the ultrasound wave and redirect it to the transducer. This is our acoustic transducer. So that's how it works. In this case, the resolution is really depending on how small you can focus light into the tissue. So that's why we call this is optical resolution for the acoustic microscopy. And the other one is so-called acoustic resolution for the acoustic microscopy. In this case, light is still being focused, but not as focused as tight as the optical resolution, just slightly being focused. And now we have a focused ultrasound transducer, and these two ultrasound focus and laser focus, they're confocal somewhere in the tissue. So in this case, since we're not tightly focused on light, and the resolution is really depending on what's the acoustic resolution. I will have an equation to talk more about that. Um, so you guys may read a lot of literatures, but they have all different development. But really, if you divide them into two categories, one is optical resolution, one is acoustic resolution. So this optical resolution, if you look at the equation here, the natural resolution. Whenever I talk about natural resolution, I talk about the resolution in X and Y, right? And then the depth resolution is Z direction. So the resolution in X and Y is determined by this equation. Look at this equation. We have constant 0.51 here. That's related to how you focus the light. And you have lambda, which is the wavelength of your laser beam. For example, if you are using green light versus using red light, green light has a shorter wavelength. You're most likely have a higher resolution on that. And here you have the NA. NA is the optic aperture of the objective lens. So that depends on what kind of objective lens you're using, how tightly you can focus the laser beam into the tissue. Again, as I said, the constant reflects the full width maximal of your focus spot. Just give you a rough idea, if we are using a green light, which is a 570 nanometers, and we have a NA number. In this case, it's a pretty bad lens. It's just 0.1. And in this case, our resolution is around 2.56 micrometers, roughly around 3 micron, for this type of optical resolution for the acoustic microscopy, right? So let me ask you guys, if I have this type of optical resolution microscopy, I think I want to study something even smaller. 3 microseconds, micrometers resolution is not enough. What you're gonna do as an engineer? How you gonna improve the resolution based on this equation?
Higher end optics, water immersion optics.
Sorry, can you say it again?
Higher NA objective, like water immersion objectives which have high numerical aperture. Like it can,
Yeah,
1.3, you can easily get a good factor of improvement in the result.
yeah, using a better objective lens, higher NA number. Cool. What else you can do?
Lower your wavelength.
Yeah, using a shorter wavelength. using different wavelengths. Yeah, good. That's great. Let's say, okay, acoustic resolution. This equation is governing the resolution for acoustic resolution. So we have 0.7, why is 0.7? Just um, different way to get this number. And then you have the speed of sound in that tissue. And then you have a NA number. That NA is the acoustic focus length, and then you have the FA is the frequency band for ultrasound transducer. So in this case, if you're using a larger frequency band of the transducer, you would have a better resolution. Typically, for example, I will give you one idea. If you have a NA number of this 0.44 and you're using a 50 megahertz ultrasound transducer, very high frequency, you roughly achieve, it's gonna achieve 45 micrometers resolution. But in this case, we have a better imaging depth around 3 millimeter. In this case, we can do something OCT and confocal cannot do deeper because most of the pure optic microscopy has less than 1 millimeter penetration depth. Um, yeah, so that's I just want to use this graph to quickly overview the imaging depths of all kinds of microscopy we typically know. So we have a confocal here. You can achieve very high resolution, of course, but the penetration depth is roughly around 200 micron, right? You see this fancy imaging single cell, but the penetration depth is really, really low. But of course, it's very important in petri dish study, some of the shadow imaging, but it's roughly 200 micron. And the two photon microscopy that can achieve roughly 1.5 millimeter. And our optical resolution photoacoustic microscopy had similar penetration depths, also similar resolution as well. This acoustic resolution can reach up to 3 to 5 millimeter, way higher penetration depths. But of course, you have to sacrifice the resolution. Typically, I would say 40 micron meters resolution. So it really depends on what your research target, how deep it is, and how much resolution you need. You can choose different imaging tools. And for the tomography, really reaches a couple of centimeter. In this case, 7 centimeter is a little bit exaggerated. I would say 4 centimeter is more realistic. But the resolution is around, I would say sub-millimeter, 0.2 millimeter, something like that. So that's for the imaging depth. Also the sensitivity. So if we want to do molecular imaging, we always asking what is the sensitivity? Can we compare with PET imaging? Because PET imaging is very sensitive. And we have equation we can calculate the sensitivity as well. This table, this is pretty old table that gave you different development of all kinds of device, how much of resolution they can achieve. One of the mammoth-based scanning, they can achieve 1200 hertz scanning, which is very impressive. Nowadays, it's getting faster and faster and cheaper as well. Oh, I think I'm running out of time. Am I?
So,
West,
it's you have an 8:30 to 10 block, which is, I
Okay.
guess, so 1 p.m. for you.
how many minutes I have?
20-ish.
20? Okay, good. 20. So again, for the microscopy, this review paper actually gave us a good idea of what we can imagine. As if you look at the panel A, that is a DNA RNA imaging. Let me ask, if I'm talking about using photoacoustic imaging microscopy for DNA RNA imaging, what is the wavelength? You can guess what is wavelength they're using in this imaging. So if you look at the table on the left, I mean the graph on the left, whenever we look at the contrast, we have to look at the absorption spectrum, right? So the RNA and DNA absorption is at the very short wavelength. Typically is 250 260 nanometers. So for figure A, they're using 250 nanometers as excitation source, and then using ultrasound, high frequency ultrasound to receive it during the microscopy. So you can achieve um, very high resolution, but also um, millimeter thickness imaging with photoacoustic microscopy, which is different than the traditional pathology slice. You have to cut it very thin, and also it's needle free, needle free. So um, I think one of the promising clinical application for photoacoustic microscopy is to do pathology slice. In many cases, it's very important, especially in like operational procedure. You want to know the tumor margin right away, so the surgeon can take out one piece, and then you don't have to send it to pathology department for 1 week, get the results back. It only takes you a couple of minutes do the photoacoustic microscopy scanning. You say the RNA, DNA, meaning you say the cell nucleus, you say all this information that the traditional pathology cannot say. So that's one possible application for that. So the panel B is the um, red blood cells. Really, this might be important if we can count how many red blood cells there. Um, and the panel C, um, do you guys know what is a panel C? Shows on the right. Any of you guys know? Have any idea? That is, anyone knows? You can have a guess. That is a retina imaging. So the red color is the blood vessels, hemoglobin, and the dark area is melanin. So one of the disease in the eye is called age-related. Um, uh, sorry, I forgot. Decoration or something like that. So you want to look at the microvessels, also look at the melanin content. So that's another application. Um, and then the panel D is high resolution microvessels imaging, and also you can use in optical dye. For example, in this case, it's Evans blue, OCG, and these are typical ICG, sorry, ICG, typical optic contrast agent. And panel E is you have vessels, and then you have these nanoparticles to target in the tumor. There's a lot of application for that. And also we can combine with traditional fluorescence microscopy as long as you can collect the fluorescence light. There's a couple groups trying to extract more information from photoacoustic microscopy. Um, for example, figure A, these are beautiful vasculature tray in the mouse ear, very impressive. But if you zoom in, you can really differentiate which one is the artery, which is the red one in uh, deeper, and then you can differentiate the vein, which is green color, shallower, and also you can track the blood flow. You can get the oxygen saturation because whenever tumor was there, there would be some hypoxia within the tumor. Um, and the figure G is a different application. That is the imaging of a lipid, which could have application in cardiac application because those plaques in the coronary artery sometimes they might rupture, and that depends on how much of the lipid you have, how thin the fiber cap is. So these are applications in cardiac, stroke and stuff. Um, yeah, just a quick summary of photoacoustic microscopy. So this is compared to photoacoustic tomography is we reduce the field of view. Typically, you imagine something less than a millimeter by millimeter, but you trying to achieve very high resolution, down to tens of micron, even couple few micron. There are some research shows you can achieve even submicron to uh, nanometer scale, and then we can visualize this single cell, even these organelles within the cell, DNA, RNA, and has different applications. So yeah, I'm gonna stop here and say if you guys have any questions related to photochemical microscopy, and then I will use the rest of the time talking about some of my new research.
Questions on photoacoustic microscopy?
Yeah.
I had a question on the kind of like the DNA RNA like stained image
Yeah.
that you showed. So when you kind of like pulse the laser and then this transducer gets the signal back, can you see the difference in like DNA and RNA, or I guess hemoglobin and melanin signals, and how do you like differentiate those?
Sorry, your voice was has been cut it off a little bit. Can you just briefly repeat it?
Yeah, so how like from the signal that you get back during
Yeah.
in the transducer, like what kind of signal is it? How does it know that this type of signal is coming from DNA and the other type of signal is coming from RNA, or are they mixed, or yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a great question. I don't think so far we can differentiate RNA and DNA from the signal. They're mixed because they have similar absorption peak around 250, 260. So we just get the total absorption of these wavelengths. Um, Pretty much, we're not trying to differentiate RNA, DNA. We're just trying to say the cell nucleus, which is the typical pathology slice uh, does. So as long as we say the cell nucleus, we get the pathological information. That be enough.
Okay, yeah, I think I get it. So this image that's like the DNA and the RNA image, it's just like kind of the um, like the intensity in absorption across like spatially?
Yeah, yeah. Mostly we got the spatial distribution because um, most of the cases we have to determine if this tumor is malignant or benign, right? That's the most of the time why we do pathology. And then the shape and the density of the cell nucleus are different if they're malignant tumor versus benign tumor. So that's how we using photoacoustic microscopy for that specific application. Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, Sean, on that absorption spectrum that you showed, the one with like I think it's one of Lee Hung's papers, I saw on the other end
Yeah.
side was glucose.
Yeah.
Which obviously is something that for a long time people have been trying to measure, and it's obviously very difficult to measure. Is there like and I know there seems to be a renewed interest in using optics to
I don't
measure glucose. Do you think photoacoustics has any role in that?
I don't believe it's been successful for um, glucose diabetes detection. I don't think so. People have been proposed this idea, but you don't have really because if you want to get a good imaging, you have to have a absorption peak, meaning whatever target you're looking at has to be different, very different than other things surrounded, right? But then glucose doesn't really have a absorption peak, so it's very, very hard to use any of the optic imaging modality to really quantify the glucose, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Good. I'm gonna move on to talk about things I'm even more excited in my recent project in my lab. You know, as I was doing photoacoustic imaging for quite some time, I think I don't know, 10 years at least. And then 2015, I started my own lab in Oklahoma, and I was thinking, what should I do? Um, there's a lot of competition in laser-induced photoacoustics, and also, to be honestly, I think the clinical application of photoacoustic imaging is unclear to me. I have talking about a lot of potential. By the way, can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
Great. So I have been talking about a lot of potential application. Um, so the problem is, yes, you can do this. For example, you can do breast imaging with photoacoustic imaging. You don't need a radiation. It's beautiful images. It's being FDA approved. Um, you get a reimbursement code. And then the question is, why the physician have to use it, right? It's like it's nice to have it, but it's not must to have it. Um, so that's the question I was asking. Can we find something really, really needed in clinic, or possibly only this imaging technology can do it? There's no other technology can do it. If if we can find it, that's the niche of the technology. So this is how we started this so-called radio acoustic imaging, similar concept as photoacoustic, not using laser, but detecting the sound wave generated by radiation, which has been already using in radiation therapy. For example, in clinic in radiation oncology, people are using all type of radiation, X-ray, proton, electron, to just trying to destroy the cancer cells DNA and then cure the cancer, right? So people are using those radiation already, and they are producing ultrasonic wave while you're treating the patient. So this signal already there, just nobody really pay much attention to that. So I was thinking, well, if we can pick up those sound wave, and firstly we can visualize radiation beam. Secondly, we can quantify how much dose being deposited there. So that's how we get started. And surprisingly, I'm very lucky. We found the niche of the technology. So this is the only technology that can measure the radiation dose on the patient for deep seated tumor. There's the other technology like Cherenkov. They can measure this on surface tumor, but not for liver, for prostate. This deep seated tumor, there's no in vivo dosimetry for that. And um, so I almost spent the last 10 years really trying to focus on this, build a device that catch the in vivo dosimetry in radiation therapy. Also, we can using the pulse echo to manage the motion, which has been quite successful so far. And we have been focused on, um, I started with X-ray. So there's a machine it's called an linear accelerator, which produce high energy X-ray. I have been working on that since 2012. We have done a lot of experiment there, and recently uh, there has been a patient study going on, um, and also we have been focused on proton. Proton is a charged particle. That's even better. So we have tested everything in the clinic. We just get the IRB protocol approved, and we can see the so-called black peak. We can track in the radiation beam scanning, which is very, very important in clinic. And this is the only way that can do this so far. And we have been doing very, very good in this direction. Also, there's new development in so-called flash radiotherapy. Basic idea is traditionally we treat the patient with radiation for, let's say, 70 grade dose on liver tumor, but that takes at least 5 weeks, and we treat the patient every day for 5 weeks, many 25 fractions. But now we condense everything into not 1 day, not 1 seconds, into 1 microseconds. We deliver almost all the dose one grade propose into the patient. That's we call a flash radiotherapy. And then the dosimetry is a problem. The traditional dosimeter does not work anymore, either saturated or they're not fast enough. And our radio acoustic imaging actually can do a very, very good job. We have done a lot of study in water, in tissue, and also on animal models recently. And in order to translate everything into clinic, we have built a robotic, very, very smart robotic system. I believe many of you guys have visited our lab with Lucia. Lucia is the person developed this robotic system. We have very two set of cameras. We have a surface camera that detects the profile of the patient. Combined with the CT information, we can tell the robot what's the best trajectory for scanning. We have another infrared camera that tracks the markers on the transducer, so we know exactly the coordinates, orientation in 3D space. So we have the software can automatically stitch all this image together. We have a whole body ultrasound, just like MRI imaging. We can co-register this whole body ultrasound with CT, and really we're trying to change the clinical practice in radiation oncology, because traditionally in radiation oncology, you have the plan, say, this liver cancer patient should receive 70 gray dose. So we have a computer, we do simulation on the CT imaging, and we do treatment plan. And then we verify this on a phantom, and then when the patient came in next day, we deliver it. So it's a totally open loop, but now we want to build it as a closed loop because we have this in vivo dosimetry, and we can change the clinic practice. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. And for the AAPM I'm attending at DC, we really made some impact, and people in clinic. This is more of the clinic metaphysicist conference. They like it very much, and we believe it's gonna have a huge clinic impact on that. So yeah, with that, I can stop here and just say if you guys have additional questions.
Well, thank you, Sean. Let's thank Sean.
Thank you guys for your attention.
Okay, thank you for carving out time. I know these conferences, I know it's a major, I know that's a really major conference, so we really appreciate you taking time out from the conference to spend some time with us. Any other questions for Dr. Xiang? Yes.
Not anymore? Okay, I saw one.
We have one question here. Please.
To go back to the microscopy, there's an image of artery and vein with a speed profile. Like, how do you acquire the speed from opto-acoustic imaging?
Did you hear the question, Sean?
No, actually, it was off for like 30 seconds.
So I think the question is on the photoacoustic microscopy slide, and there was a slide where you had an image where you showed both arteries and veins. And the question was how you were able to differentiate between the arteries and the veins. Is that right?
There's this like a speed.
I think if you can go back to that slide and project it, Sean, that would be, I think, helpful.
Yeah, I can go back to the slides.
Screen, and I think there's a specific question about that slide.
Okay, goes back to here.
Yes. Yeah. How do you measure the speed, like in the artery and the vein?
How do you measure what?
The speed.
The speed.
The third image.
Oh, the speed. The third image, C. How do you determine the speed of the blood flow?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first thing, let me answer you. How do you differentiate artery and vein, right? Because artery and vein, the difference is the oxygenation of the blood is different, right? So as long as we're using two different wavelengths, one is sensitive to hemoglobin, one is one is sensitive to oxygenated hemoglobin, one is sensitive to deoxygenated hemoglobin. We can differentiate those two artery and vein. And second question is, how do you get the speed? You need a very fast imaging speed, right? So as long as you have, imagine that you have many slides, you have 10 slides in a second, you can tracking the blood flow, and then you can calculate the imaging speed. The blood flow speed.
So are you saying that there's a particle tracking somehow that's done?
Yeah, you can tracking how the RBC is moving within the vessels. Actually, there's a new technology. Sorry, can you say it again?
Yeah, are you doing particle tracking in some way in order to extract the speed, or how is the image process? So if you acquire images serially at a high frame rate, how is the image processing done to get what to us looks almost like a continuous, you have a color across all of the veins and arteries indicating speed, and it's spatially heterogeneous in the vein. So how is that image processing done to render such visualizations of speed, of flow?
Right. I think honestly, I think this imaging was taken years ago, and they probably didn't really give a spatial differences of the speed. What I learned is as long as you have fast enough imaging speed, you take the differential of each imaging, and you can know the differences, and then you can render in the speed. Yeah.
So I guess
Um,
the details in the paper itself.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Recently, there is a computing technology, just purely ultrasound, that can image in microvessels without laser, without contrast agent, just because ultrasound imaging system nowadays can reach really, really fast imaging speed up to 10,000 frames per second. So there are algorithms that can figure out the blood flow. So imagine that you have ultrasound penetrating tens of centimeters that give you microvessels imaging without contrast, without laser, without anything, without X-ray. That's going to be a competitor for photoacoustic as well.
Great question. Any other questions for Dr. Xiang? Okay, thanks again, Sean. Really appreciate your time. Let's thank him one.
Of course. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.